from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Welcome to Broncos Country Tonight as we break down the Broncos' loss to the Las Vegas Raiders 17-13. Certainly some highlight moments. The Broncos getting 3 turnovers on defense, plus 3 overall. Drew Lock had the 3rd highest grade in Pro Football Focus, despite not throwing a touchdown, but he was pretty accurate considering what we expect out of Drew Lock. And overall, the Broncos definitely had position to win this game. I think the biggest shock of all of it is the Raiders amassing 160 rushing yards and the Broncos amassing 18.
Yeah, that was definitely the problem. 14 carries between your 2 running backs. That's not enough carries, number one. Number two, they were getting shut down. The Raiders sold out to stop the run, and it worked. The Broncos didn't adjust offensively. The play calling didn't change. They just kept trying to do the same thing over and over, and that's kind of a microcosm of what this team has been this season. You look back and you see this season, you look back at what could have been. I mean, this defense, if they give up 35 or fewer points to the Chargers next week, they will have allowed fewer points than they did during the Super Bowl 50 season. Conversely, if they score 26 points, if they don't score 26 points or more, they will have scored less points than last season. So the combination of Teddy Bridgewater couldn't beat the combination of Kendall Hinton, Brett Rippon, Jeff Driscoll, and Drew Lock.
I mean, so what does that all mean? Like, what does that all mean in your opinion? Like, does that mean?
It means you wasted a great defense on a bad offense. It means that your offense handpicked its quarterback and said, we need this specific thing, and scored fewer points. So it didn't work. What your coaches said they needed was not what they needed. It says that, what they were doing last year, even with the turnovers, was actually more successful. In terms of being able to score points. They beat up on bad football teams this year. You look at the wins that they've gotten against the Lions, the Jets, Giants, Jaguars. Those are crap football teams. I mean, let's just be honest. Those are bad football teams. And that's 5-year wins. You start to look at the rest of the wins. The Chargers, they've been hit or miss, and they could have gone either way. The Dallas, that's a quality win, but Dallas was missing quite a bit in that game in terms of their offensive line. I feel like there's another win in here somewhere that I'm missing, but
well, those were the 2 big quality wins of the season for sure. I mean, if we're going back over it, I mean, otherwise they had the 4-game losing streak that they obviously really couldn't get out of their own way. They got a win over Washington, but again, Washington's really not much of a good team.
Right, we saw Washington get boat raced. So
yeah,
we know what they are and aren't.
So I think that's kind of what it is. I think what's frustrating for a lot of fans right now is the processes seem to be different, yet you got the same result.
Well, and that's what but during training camp, that's what I tried to say. Is just like, look, what we've done is trade the potential development of somebody for a prettier way to lose. Yeah, the completion percentage is higher, but that doesn't mean anything. I can complete 2-yard passes on 3rd down when you need 8. And we saw an offense that is just not capable of getting plays where it's needed, where if things go wrong, you are not capable of recovering from that. We saw penalties yesterday they weren't capable of digging themselves out of. And we've seen it over the course of the season. You get to 3rd and 8, and you're simply not capable of executing. You have a quarterback who isn't capable of executing it, and an offense that doesn't cater to. Why are you running routes that bring you back away from the sticks on 3rd down? You should never run a curl on 3rd down, like, ever. Like, why would you ever do that?
Unless you're going 5 yards beyond the sticks and then coming back,
right, and then coming
to
back,
the sticks.
And then coming back to the sticks, right? So you should never do something that takes your momentum away from getting a 1st down. Where are the crossers? Where are the things that put your receiver in a chance to catch the ball and use his momentum to create you a 1st down? They don't exist in this offense. And so when people want to talk about the design of the offense, that's specifically what I'm referring to. When people want to talk about bad play calling, are they just talking about plays that don't work? Or are they talk about the sequencing, which is I'm going to take some random, no nonsense, nonsensical deep shot that has a very low percentage of happening on 1st down. So now it's 2nd and 10. Okay, well now I need some yards, so I'm going to run it here. Well, we got 2, so now it's 3rd and 8. That's what I'm talking about. Bad play calling is bad sequencing. There's some designs in these plays that are okay. The deep over that Pat Shermer runs, that's a pretty good play. It works most of the time. But they just don't vary it up, and they don't do things that work. And they just have not adapted this offense to work in the modern NFL, and everyone has caught on. And you see what happens. A bad defense. The Raiders are a bad defense. Shut them down.
Well, they certainly did. And again, they shut down the run, the one thing that was kind of the lifeblood of this offense. And you're right, there were no adjustments. And simultaneously, the Raiders offense, who were the 30th ranked run attack in the league, got 160 yards on you. And the Broncos have been they've been a top 10 rushing defense right around there, hovering around there. And they just got gashed. And that's, for me, when you talk about adjustments, you talk about what the Raiders did differently. The Broncos took the lead going into halftime. The Raiders came out and they just ran the ball. That's like all they did for the remainder of the game. They just ran the ball. And, I mean, they made a couple of key throws when they absolutely had to. They still had some turnovers, but in the end, the Broncos, they just could not survive the smallest of errors, not even turnovers, the smallest of errors, TFLs, tackles for loss, a penalty on Garrett Bowles for illegal hands to the face, stuff like that. They just could not get past that. And
margins are too thin.
Yeah, the margins remain way too thin. So now, and I think now that you're more or less officially eliminated, I know mathematically 1%, whatever. Now that you're eliminated, I think the next question comes for a lot of Broncos fans and people that are going to be watching this video. They're going to be asking what's next for the coaching staff. They're going to be asking what would be the new process here to dig yourself out of this.
Well, you wait till the end of the year to fire the coaching staff. It makes no sense to do it in season. I know there's a lot of emotional knee-jerk reaction out there in social media. We got to fire people now to, quote, send a message. It doesn't send a message to anybody. It really doesn't. And I'll tell you, the only person it sends a message to is the locker room, saying the front office doesn't care about the rest of the season, so it's okay for you to pack it in. Like fans want immediate gratification, but the reality is you've got 2 games you have to do. You have a workplace environment you have to maintain. So you might as well, since you're already paying these coaches, just pay them to coach out the season. You can inform them that they're not being retained and interview people if you really, really need to do virtual interviews over the next 2 weeks with the new NFL rule. But reality is nobody's hiring anybody off virtual interviews anyway. So this idea that you're getting a jump start is also one that is not something that's real or realistic. You're not in college football. You don't need to get a jump on recruiting. Hiring somebody first doesn't really make any difference. The only thing is making sure you've gotten your assistants and that coach's assistants already shorn up and secured.
I want to piggyback on that too, because I think for whatever reason, and maybe this is just painted by some media members, there's this perception that George Payton's been sitting on his hands this entire time, that he's just been sitting back and just crossing his fingers and hoping upon all hope that the coaching staff figures it out. And there are plans in place. There are conversations being had. There are back channeling. So we've been around the NFL long enough, you even longer than me, but I've been out to the combine with you. I've seen how some of this sausage is made, if you will. And in the end, nobody sits on their hands. There are no idle moments throughout an entire year that exist for a GM.
GMs are preparing for this eventuality, even if it doesn't look that way. They're preparing for every eventuality,
right,
and trying to keep all that stuff in line. That's what they do. But this idea that we've got to start the process. Buddy, let me tell you something. The interview is the end of the process. The process started long before that, when the general manager is doing background on that, getting information through that coach's representation about what kind of staff they would look like, what their plans would be. The in-person is just to start to get the personality, to make sure that everybody's compatible and all. The interview is the end of the process, not the beginning.
You do wonder, as you go back to the offense and talk about the hiring of Pat Shurmur, something that on our show was not exactly a celebrated move necessarily. I'll put it like that. When we talked about it on Broncos Country Tonight, the radio show, it was one of those, well, look at his history. It's not like you're bringing in the next wonderkind of the position. You're bringing in a guy that has a history, and that's what Vic Fangio wanted. But we've often said sometimes the decisions from a head coach who is in charge of the entire team, not just the defense, can impact his overall efficacy as a job, as in his own job and what he gets to have. So the decision to hire Pat Shurmur, negatively, consequence, whatever you want to say, may end up being one of the things that cost him his job.
It might be. And to be fair, there's still a scenario where Vic Fangio keeps his job. I don't think there's any scenario in which Pat Shurmur keeps his job. I don't think there's any scenario in which Tom McMahon keeps his job. There's still a scenario where Vic Fangio could keep his job. But this stuff will sort itself out in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And that's the main thing. Who am I to tell you? If you want to be emotional. But that kind of stuff and demanding heads on spikes right now, that's knee-jerk stuff. And I'm telling you, it plays the opposite in the locker room that you would think.
Yeah, and then last point on this, and then obviously for the next video we do, we'll be looking ahead to the Chargers because we still want to preview that game. But I think, the point that you kind of bring up here, and one thing that I think I kind of pride ourselves on is, we're not really the pound the table to get people fired, not because it's kind of bad for them anyways, just to really root for people to lose their livelihood. It is tacky. But also those things, as you said, they work themselves out. The fact is, some people will be crowing over the next couple of days. Well, I told you Vic Fangio wasn't very good. Listen, they're tied for the number one defense in the league in scoring allowed. Yeah. They are still one of the top red zone defenses. They are still top in the league in passing and rushing. Mm-hmm. So you can say what you want about him as a head coach. There are questions. But his defense, what he's been able to do there is 100% sound.
Yeah, and I think the type of people that crow about that kind of stuff are the same type of people that are wrong about, a million other things, but never want to point that out. I'm
if you send out enough tweets on both sides.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And you'll pardon me if I'm never taking, who we should hire coaching advice from the guy that thought Brandon Lloyd was better than Demaryius Thomas.
That's Benjamin Allbright. I'm Ryan Edwards. On our next video, we will preview the Chargers. We'll look ahead to that game. Thanks, as always, for watching Broncos Country Tonight.